Hello there, my name is Gaia Kelch. I am a local real estate agent in the Sacramento, California market. And today I want to go over with you what you as a buyer need to be aware of before you're going out and signing these buyer representation broker compensation agreements, also known as the buyer rep agreements, that are now going to be required. Nationwide, they are required as of August 17th. Today, as I'm recording this, it is August 16th, and they are already in place and required in the local Sacramento market. So there are some things on these forms that myself kind of raise an eyebrow to me. And if I were you, if I was a buyer, there are some things that I would be concerned about and want to discuss further with my agents. So it is going to be more crucial now more than ever for you to work with an experienced, honest agent who has all of your best interests at heart. I think it's going to be very obvious right at the get-go which agents are just looking for a commission and which ones are actually looking to serve and help you as a consumer. So it's going to be very important. So I want to arm you with information so when you're going out and having these discussions with agents, you know exactly what to talk about. Again, as a disclaimer, I am in California, so the forms I am going over are California Association of Realtor forms. If you are in a different state, your forms are going to be different. They're going to look different. And honestly, they're probably going to be way shorter, which is very exciting for you. In California, everything is way more long and drawn out than it needs to be. So let's get right into it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So to start off, the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement is 5 pages long. However, again, because we live in glorious California, which I really do love this state, there is a whole other slew of other additional disclosures and advisories automatically attached to this form, making this 5-page form like a 50-page document. We're not going to go over those other documents today. You're going to want to do that with your agent. And the reason is because personally, at this point, they are repetitive. They are also attached automatically when you sign an offer. So if you sign them at both stages, you will be signing them twice. I hope that at some point that gets removed and changed, but for now, they're automatically populated. Talk to your agent about them. The form is the buyer representation and broker compensation agreement. Essentially, what this form does is it allows your agent to show you properties. It's going to be required that you enter into some sort of agreement prior to showing any homes going forward. Even open houses, there's a very short open house specific form just advising you about agent disclosures and agent relationships. But this is going to establish a professional working relationship between you and your agent. It is going to talk about the timeline, if it's exclusive or non-exclusive. It is going to outline their compensation and talk to you about how that gets paid out. So let's dive in. And I want to outline a couple of different things that I, as an agent, see that if I was a buyer right now, I would be going, that doesn't feel very good, or like, that's a little concerning, let's jump into it. So things that would be raising my eyebrows as a buyer, because not everything on this form feels like it's in the buyer's best interest. So I want you to be well-informed and armed with the information. So the very first thing that we're going to go over right here is that there's a timeline to this form. It cannot exceed 3 months. After 3 months, this form is automatically expired. So if you're still working with your agent at that point to purchase a home, which many people do, you will need to get a new one of these signed after 3 months. It can, however, be as short as just 1 day or even for a specific property only, as shown right there under B1. And how that might be a good thing is that, let's say you meet an agent, you're just starting this process, you haven't really talked to a bunch of agents, and you do want to see a property, but you're not feeling fully want to commit to one person. You can do just the specific property single showing right there for a day. And then your commitment will be just for that 1 day to them. And after that day, this is automatically going to expire. And you can discuss with them further if you want to increase that working relationship. The other thing that I think is very important is to know know the difference between non-exclusive and exclusive agency relationship. There are two very different things. Non-exclusive is the default. If this is not checked, it is automatically non-exclusive. If it is exclusive, it has to be checked and then initialed down below. But so the difference is going to be a couple of different things. So non-exclusive is definitely a lighter commitment. Compensation under non-exclusive is owed to the agent only if there was agent involvement with the property. So as an agent, I totally agree with that. I think that I should only be compensated if I actually helped you purchase a property. That makes sense to me, right? It even allows you as a buyer to work with multiple agents and have multiple non-exclusive agent agreements out there. I absolutely advise against that for a variety of reasons that we will go into, but you technically can. You just need to show and provide written notice to each agent that you are working with other agents. Exclusive is a stricter agreement, and it ties buyers to just one agent, which I do like. I do think that if an agent is putting resources into you, they're providing you with information, they're taking the time to work hard for you, that you should be loyal to and work with just one agent. A side note, as agents, the only way we get paid, we do not make a salary. We do not have steady income. We do not get paid an hourly rate. The only way we get paid is when we sell a home. We are commission only. So it is important, if you are working with somebody that you really enjoy, to just work with them, because they are putting a ton of effort into you. They're putting a lot of education and guidance into you. It is a lot of energy and it's a lot of resources too. You should be working with just one agent, even if it's a non-exclusive agreement. I'll say it again throughout this, and it actually protects you. I'll talk about that a little bit later why. But under exclusive, here's something that I don't necessarily like about exclusive, is that the agent is entitled to compensation for any property purchased by the buyer during the agreement, even without agent involvement. So that to me doesn't feel right. And as a buyer, that wouldn't feel right to me either. That would be a reason why I would go, well, even though I want to work just with you, let's do non-exclusive. It doesn't feel right. I don't think that anybody should be paid for something that they weren't involved with. So here's one common example of this, is that buyers sometimes go out to new build communities without their agent. A lot of time the new builders will say, if the agent is not there on the first viewing of the property with you, that they cannot be part of the transaction and they cannot get paid. So let's say you have an exclusive agreement, you decide to go to a new community without your agent, and you decide to purchase the home. Under an exclusive agreement, your agent is entitled to and has the right to come back and say to you, you owe me compensation for that, because we have an exclusive agreement. So that right there, that non-broker involvement, still giving them access to the compensation, being owed the compensation, is the thing that I do not like. It's one of the things I do not like about the exclusive agreement. So that's the difference between non-exclusive and exclusive. Discuss with your agent, about the two differences. And again, if your agent is just sending you this form to DocuSign without any explanation, without offering to go over it with you either in person or in Zoom or at least over the phone, if they are not discussing these things with you and just sending it over pre-filled out with what they want for you to sign, that is a red flag. You should go find a different agent right off the bat. Save yourself the headache, because that's going to be a whole transaction full of communication issues, guidance and support issues. That right there screams lack of integrity to me. So if your agent is just sending you this to DocuSign without going through any of this, run for the hills, find a new agent. Red flag all day, every day. So, seen enough, don't need to see anymore. Okay, so buyer agent compensation is going to be the next thing that we're going to be talking over. Another important factor in this form that you need to be aware of. So right here, the amount of real estate commissions is not fixed by law. They are set by each broker individually and may be negotiable between the buyer and the broker. So right here, what's going to happen is it's going to show your agent's fee. Typically, it's going to be a percentage of the sale price, and it's going to show that right there. So as a buyer, you may be able and willing to pay this fee directly. And if that's the case, that's awesome. But for a lot of buyers, they don't have the extra funds after down payment and closing costs and everything else that comes with it to also pay their agent additionally. So if that is the case, then your agent will negotiate their fees directly with the seller when they are submitting the offer for you. If the seller agrees to pay the full amount indicated in this section right here, awesome. No further negotiations are needed. That part is done. Move on to the next set of negotiations, right? The next part of the transaction. But if the seller agrees, to pay less than what this form states, then there's a couple of different options. So let's say right here, your agent says that their compensation is 2.5% of the sale price of the home. And the seller goes, I will give you 2%. I will pay your agent 2%. There's a 0.5% in question. So one of two things could happen in this scenario. And again, this is why it's going to be important for you to talk to a well-versed, a very active, very knowledgeable, and very honest agent right off the bat, because these conversations are going to be easier with folks like that are true professionals. So if there's that 0.5% discrepancy, right, your agent's fee is 2.5, the seller's going to pay 2. One of two things is going to happen. You can either come out of pocket with that extra 0.5% to pay your agent's full fees, or you and your agent can renegotiate that amount. Then they potentially would take lower. If it was me as an agent and my client got into a home that they loved, but the seller was only paying 2% instead of my 2.5%, I would say, okay, I'll take it. I personally am not going to stand in the way of somebody's dream home because they physically do not have enough money to pay me the difference of what my full fee is. I'm going to help them regardless. If there's still option to negotiate with the seller up, we'll look into that. Like, let's say the seller said, I'll only give you 1% and my full fee is 2.5%. That's going to warrant a different conversation. I am, again, going to try and negotiate directly with the seller. And here's the thing, sellers are going to take the best offer. They might be a little headstrong at first and say, no, I'm only going to offer this. But at the end of the day, they want to net the most amount of money and get their house sold. So if our offer is the best offer, even with a higher commission, they're probably going to take it. So, just something to kind of note there. But so I've established a personal guarantee for my clients. My personal guarantee is that you are never going to get an unexpected bill for my services. You are never going to be sidelined or have a fee that you owe to me that you were not aware of. That's never, ever going to happen. I promise that. We are going to know exactly what the seller is paying me, what my fees are, and we're going to have those conversations before anything is set in stone, before any contract is agreed to, and we move forward. So know that, this whole thing can feel very ambiguous, but I have that personal guarantee because I want clients to feel comfortable knowing that they're not going to have a $10,000 bill from me at the end of the transaction. That was never going to happen. One other thing to note about the compensation is that you should note that whatever amount is in the buyer rep agreement is the maximum amount that your agent can be compensated. They cannot collect more than the agreement states. They can, however, negotiate with you to collect less if needed. Okay, so the next thing I want to go over right here that you should absolutely be aware of as a buyer is the continued right to payment for broker-involved properties. So this right here is a fillable portion. Again, things that we need to look for in this form are the fillable portions. A lot of this stuff is pre-printed California material. There's not changing a lot of it, but the things you do want to keep an eye on are anything that you and the agent can fill out and agree to. Because they're going to be optional and you can talk to them and change it and amend it to your liking, as long as they're in agreement too. Everybody has to be in agreement. But so the continuation period says the continuation period shall be X calendar days after the representation period or any extension. So basically what that means is that if your agent has showed you specific properties that you then write an offer on without them after the representation period is over, that they are still owed compensation for the X amount of days after this dissolves. So let's say that you filled this right out here, the continuation period out for 30 calendar days. And 2 weeks after this agreement is either canceled or dissolved naturally, you go to a property that your agent showed you and write an offer with the listing agent and get into contract on it. Your agent, your buyer agent, even though your agreement is done because of this continuation period, they can come back to you and say, you owe me compensation for that house because I showed you that home. I have proof that I showed you that home. I have proof that there was broker involvement and that I was the procuring cause. So for X amount of days after that, is expired or dissolved, they can still come to you and say, you owe me compensation for this. So be very careful and be aware what is filled out for the continuation period right there. Does it say 30 days? Is it 90 days? If your agent, again, is just sending you this to DocuSign, not talking to you about any of this stuff, not filling it out with you, red flags. If you look at this E3 and you go, holy crap, this says for 5 months or 120 calendar days or whatever, that I owe them compensation on a house, whose best interests are they looking out for? Yours or theirs? So be aware of that. Cancellation rights and notice. So non-exclusive, you can cancel this agreement at any time, just written notice, send your agent an email, say, hey, I want to cancel the agreement. If you start feeling that way, I would always say do it sooner than later because you don't want to waste everybody's time and you want to get yourself out of an agreement that you're not comfortable with as soon as possible. So for non-exclusive, the default is just the second that written notice is received. Or your agent could check, X amount of days after receipt. Cancellation for exclusive, however, is a little bit different. And this is another thing that as a buyer, I would be raising my eyebrows at over exclusive representation. The cancellation is effective for 30 days after receipt. So for 30 days after they receive your cancellation notice, this agreement is still in effect. It's going to take a full 30 days to dissolve. So again, is that something where you are going and writing a offer on a property that they showed you 30 day, within that 30-day span? They could potentially come and ask you for compensation and be entitled to that. So be very wary of that. So next step that we kind of want to go over too is the buyer financial personal information. So this says within 5 days or, filled out right there. Once this agreement is signed, that you are going to submit to your agent proof of funds showing that you are actually financially capable of purchasing a home. And the proof of funds is going to be proof of funds for a down payment and closing costs. So this is going to, and this is actually something I do like as an agent because I waste a lot of time. Time's very precious. This is going to limit people that are not financially ready from going out and showing properties, viewing properties with agents. If you are not financially capable of purchasing a home, you cannot be wasting an agent's time going and viewing properties at this point. This agreement is going to prevent that. So you are going to be required to prove that you are actually financially capable of purchasing a home. If you are just somebody that wants to go out, sorry, it's not going to happen, I would suggest you go to open houses. There is going to be a very shortened open house form. It's not going to tie you to an agent or anything like that. But so if you want to just go look at homes, but you're not ready to buy, you need to be going to open houses. So sorry about that. This is something that I do agree with, again, because it gives me more time for my clients, It frees up time. It's very important asset. Also, under the buyer financial information section, G2 right here, if this is checked, this is saying that buyer does not have sufficient funds to pay their broker. So if you do not physically have the money on top of down payment and closing costs to pay your agent's fees, you will have them check that right there. Even if, I do want to note this, so even if you are physically capable of paying your agent's fees, you don't have to lie to them and say that you aren't or anything like that. The goal is to always negotiate the fees, the buyer agent fees, directly with the seller and have them pay it. Up until this point, I've been 100% successful doing that. I don't foresee that changing at all. It's just going to be another layer of negotiations up front. So even if you do have the funds available, you don't have to lie and say, no, go ahead and check that. That's fine. That doesn't mean that you're required to pay or that you are going to, have, again, an unexpected bill. That's not going to happen. What's going to happen is that you will then have a discussion if there's a home that you love and the seller is completely unwilling to pay and you still want to move forward on the home. You're going to have the option to look at how you can move forward with that. And then if paying your agent to represent you in that home sale makes the most sense because you still want that home, you'll be able to do that. But the goal is to always to get the seller to pay the buyer agent compensation. Okay, so the next thing that I want to go over, and we've talked about it briefly before, is the advisory regarding buyer signing multiple buyer representation agreements right here. So again, you have a non-exclusive agreement with an agent. You decide that you want to get another non-exclusive agreement with an agent. God knows why, but you do. You have multiple agreements with multiple agents. You are required to submit written notice to each agent that you have other agreements out there. Also, if you have an offer out with one agent and you're working with other agents, you are required to let the other agents know that you have an offer out. One of the things that this is going to do, it protects the agents, but it's also going to protect you as the buyer. So if you are working with multiple agents and you have multiple agents showing you the same property, looking into reports, inspections, talking to the listing agent, doing all of the things that we do on the same property, and then you go into contract and purchase that home, you could have multiple agents coming after you saying that you owe them compensation for that home. And technically they are right. So it is not in your best interest to have multiple agreements out with multiple agents at the same time. It's a bad idea because you could become, you could find yourself in a very sticky situation where multiple agents are saying that you owe them compensation for that sale. And technically they are right. So to limit the headache, work with one agent at a time. Even if you have a non-exclusive agreement, work with just one agent at a time. If that agreement isn't working well, if the relationship isn't going very well, dissolve it right away and then find a new agent. But work with one agent at a time. Not only protects you from agents coming after you for owed compensation, but it's also going to allow your agent to better serve you. Because if we know that we're just working with we're working with a client that's only working with us, I'm going to pour my full resources into you. I am going to be giving you all of the time that I have available for you. I am going to prioritize your needs. And I'm going to do an excellent job for you. If I know that you're out there working with other agents, honestly, once I get that written notice that you have other agreements out with other agents, as a busy agent myself who really, really prioritizes relationships, I'm probably going to say, see you later. I'm going to say, good, perfect, work with the other agents. That totally works for me. We will not be working together anymore. Like, honestly, just because I want to pour my full resources into you. And if I'm not getting that reciprocity, it's just not going to be there for me. So just a side note. And then the last thing that I want to go over, it's not a fillable section, but it is important for you to know, it is broker involvement, also known as procuring cause. So these actions under broker involvement entitle agents to compensation if the property is purchased. And they are defined as buyer physically entered and was shown the property by the broker. Also, side note, broker and agent have been used interchangeably throughout this video. For the sake of the video, let's just say that they are the same thing in this video. Broker and agent will mean the same thing in this video. Broker showed the property to a buyer virtually. I just did this. I had some clients who were living out of the country. They were military clients, so I had to show them the properties virtually via, video, WhatsApp, all of that stuff. Broker submitted to seller a signed written offer from buyer to acquire the property. Broker performed a market analysis related to the property or reviewed property-specific documents or disclosures with the buyer. Or the property was introduced to the buyer by the broker, and the broker acted on buyer's behalf. So doing things like calling the listing agent, finding more information, deep diving, pulling up tax records, plat maps, all of those things are going to entitle your agent to compensation if you purchase the home. They are all defined as broker involvement. So again, if you have multiple agents that you are working with at the same time, and they're all doing these activities for yourself, you, my friend, are dancing with fire, and it is not a good idea. You might feel like you're on top of the world, have all of these agents at your beck and call. It might sound great until all of them say, hey, you owe me money for this property, and then all of a sudden you do. I mean, they have the right to take you to court for that if they can prove that. That is not a situation you want to be in. So again, work with one agent at a time. If the relationship is not going well, dissolve it right away, interview another agent. So I hope that this was helpful. To recap, the things that we talked about in this video were the timeline of these agreements. It's either going to be a timeline, it's going to be maxed out at 3 months, it can be as short as 1 day, or it can be a single property. The difference between exclusive and non-exclusive representation. You need to choose for yourself which one's going to be more beneficial to you. Buyer agent compensation, what their fees are, and how that could potentially be paid out to them. The continuation period, also known as the period after this expires, that your agent is still owed compensation on a property that there was broker involvement if you went and purchased it on your own. Cancellation and how to dissolve the agreement. Again, written notice. Your requirements as a buyer to provide financial information to your agent in a specified timeline. Written notice of other agreements with agents is required. So if you have multiple non-exclusive agreements, you need to let every single agent know with written notice that you have those out there. And then what procuring cause is defined as. So I hope that this was helpful. You know, there's always changes in the industry, there's always changes in life, so this doesn't have to be a scary thing or anything like that. My goal with this video was to shine some light on this form and help it feel a little less ambiguous to you as a buyer, and make you aware of the things that if I was a buyer, that I would be raising my eyebrows at and would be a little concerned at, would want to have further discussions with my agent. So I hope this was helpful. Again, my name is Gaia Kelch. I am a local real estate agent in the greater Sacramento, California market. If you have any questions of the California market in general, I am happy to go over anything with you. If you have questions about this agreement too, and you are in, again, California, because it's going to look different in other states, reach out to me. You can text me. My phone number is going to be listed below. It's 530-210-0498. You can email me, gaia@homebodygaia.com. I hope that you like, follow, and subscribe, and share this with somebody that needs to know what they need to be aware of with these new buyer rep agreements. Okay, you guys have a great day.